All right, what is up, friends and fellow anti-netters? For today's video, I'm going to take you through the process of a Niklas Luhmann style literature note. So here in the online archive of Luhmann, we find a literature note. Now, this is not it. This is just the front of the note. Now, before he started every single book, he would write the bibliography information on the front of the card. Then, on the back of the card, so I'm going to flip it over, it looked like this. As you can see, he has page numbers on the left and then brief snippets of the idea or the thought or the passage or the thing that came to mind. Sometimes they were even bigger, like you see that number 48 that has quite a few thoughts that came to mind when he was reading this book. Now, for how he read, there was a passage when he actually said that he likes to read out in the sun. We also see from his office and other videos that Luhmann also read in his office. But here's a picture of him that I found online of just good old Niklas Luhmann, the little radical, theoretical madman that he was, reading. And as you can see in this book, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little note card or an A6 slip of paper in the book. So he just places it in his book and he reads away. And he always has a pen in hand, or probably on the table or in his pocket somewhere, so that whenever he encounters ideas, he writes them in the style on the note that I just showed you. So he writes it on a little piece of paper like this. So what he then does after this step is he goes and either creates what he calls a reformulation note or a reflection note. Now, in my other videos, you've seen a different style, which is going straight from reading a book, to an extract or an excerpt note. And that's a one-step process, and it saves a lot of time. It's actually it seems like it saves a lot of time, but it actually can take up quite a lot of time to actually complete a book doing it that way, because you're more in an exploratory mode. Now, when you do it the Luhmannesque way, or the Luhmannian way, of basically writing notes on an index card first and then developing it, it can actually be a faster process. It's more intentional. It's a more intentional style of reading. And so what I'm going to do is walk you through the actual process of doing a Luhmann two-step process literature note to actually creating a main note out of it. And I did this for the past day and a half. I actually finished this book and I crushed it. I read it super fast. And the way to do that is what I'm going to show you how to do right now. The way to do that is, it's a more intentional reading strategy. For instance, I'm working on the book on the Antinet, right? Here's like the layout of the cards and the topics. And I'm working on the section about Niklas Luhmann. Now, in the section, I have a very clear goal of what I want to glean and extract out of books on Niklas Luhmann. So for instance, I read a book. This is in German, by the way. I had to get it translated. But it's a book called Niklas Luhmann Shortcuts. And then I also read this one, The Radical Luhmann. And this is more about his theoretical work, okay? So here's how you get started, and here's how you actually do a Luhmann-style literature note. Okay, the first thing you want to do is, like Luhmann, you want to create a card and write the bibliography information on it. And I know this sounds kind of like a lengthy waste of time process, but it does slow down your mind and gets you to actually focus on just this book. So what I did here, and I added a few things to it, which I'm going to show you below. So Moeller, Hans, George, I don't even know if that's how to pronounce it right. As you can see, that's the name of the book. Moeller is his last name, comma, Hans George. And then The Radical Luhmann, as you can see, that's the title of the book. And then I have New York, New York, Columbia University Press, 2011. Now, this is why I love doing it, because it slows you down and makes you actually focus on when it was actually published or written. So this was written before the whole PKM Zettelkasten movement really started to gain steam. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, here's the second thing I do, and this is adapted from Mortimer Alder's book, How to Read a Book. He talks about how to actually x-ray a book and dissect it. Okay, so what I do and what you should do is under this bibliography information, write goal. So this is your selection intentions. It's what you are going to try to select from the book. So what I wrote is I want to select and extract any interesting information on Niklas Luhmann the man, and also build out the radical conceptual interests of Luhmann section, which is in my Antinet 4214/3/D, okay? And so what I also want to do is get a familiarity with Luhmann's conceptual theoretical work and add it if there's anything new that I learn, okay? And then the second thing I do is I go through the table of contents and I do write out a brief overview of the book. So this is an overview of the book: Refuting Humanism, Contingency, Philosophy, Plato, Mind, Body, Solution. And when I did this, when I wrote out the contents and tried to summarize it, I actually learned something. And I saw that, oh, Niklas Luhmann, 1927 to 1998, a short intellectual biography. So I had completely overlooked this when I started reading this. I did not even know that there was a short intellectual biography in there. And so that is one other benefit of actually taking the deliberate time to overview and almost dissect a book before you even really just go through it and dismantle it and read it in a very, a lot faster fashion than you otherwise would. Okay, so that is the start, okay? Now, what you do, and I didn't do it on this one, because this one I started this whole process like a few months ago, and so I didn't do it on the back, but I did it on a separate card, and I'm going to show you that separate card. And that separate card is here. And what you will see is, this is from my reading notes today, as I just wrote down brief ideas, and then Luhmann wrote the page number at the front. I don't know why I like to write the page number in parentheses on the back. So there's psychosomatic. That was an interesting concept I came across. The mind-body communication triadism. You can kind of see what I did, right? But now I want to hone in on this, and this is what I also recommend: writing these down with a pencil, because it forces you not to be a perfectionist. Just write down a brief idea. Don't try to make it clean and pretty, like, with a pen. It's just there. It's almost like scratch paper or a cue to help you hang on to ideas. Now, the benefits of doing it like this versus just doing it in the margins of a book is, now I have, and here's the other side, now I have, and I'll file this in the bibliography section of my Antinet, which is, as you can see, this one in red, bib, right? And it's organized alphabetically, right? Is, if I ever want to kind of review what I read in this book, all I have to do is pull out, this card and just review all these ideas and jump in the book, So otherwise you would have to, go through each section of the book written in the margins and do something like that. So that's the benefit of this style and method. Now, I want to hone in on this section right here, okay? So what this says is that Luhmann's political position, and this is in very, very crappy handwriting because I just wanted to make it, real brief, because you don't want to take too long while reading. It just slows down everything, okay? And also, I forgot the most important part. On my desk, you see this is a 60-minute clock or timer. What I recommend as the minimum, or something to strive for, is I do 2 60-minute sessions. So read for 2 hours in the mornings, okay, when your mind is freshest, and just try to read pretty quickly and fast, but not too fast, right? you've selected you've set your intention to be, right here with your goal. So you want to read according to your goal. Okay, this is why this method, although it's a two-step method, actually can result in a lot faster reading of books than the just simple one-step book to extract method that I've talked about and shown in other videos. So anyways, this section, it says, Luhmann's political position, not a leftist liberal. He debated such people, became famous. It was just a brief section and idea right there. That's what this part is. It also, I later on found that Luhmann's philosophy was a mix of Stoicism, Spinozism, and Taoism, Taoism. And so what I decided to do after the 2-hour reading session is I then look at all of these and then I make actual main notes out of it. And so I'm going to show you the main note that I created out of these two. So I combined these two right here. Okay. And this is the note I created out of it. Now, this is called a reformulation note. I didn't excerpt what I read. I summarized it in my own words. Okay, so this is what you can see is Luhmann's political and philosophical views. He was misconceived to be conservative right-winged thinker because he debated the left-wing liberal ideologue of the time, and some could say even dismantled him in the 1970s. And that person was his intellectual rival, Habermas. And this made Luhmann rather famous in Germany at the time. And this Habermas, this guy that he debated, was a left-winged, very liberal thinker, and was trying to implement a lot of liberal ideas. And Luhmann debated him and kind of, I would say, seemingly it seemed like attacked him, because if you're not a far left-winger, then you're, of course, a right-wing conservative thinker. However, this was not the case. Luhmann was not conservative. His views could be likened to a laissez-faire type of approach to politics and the economy. He could more so be likened to a libertarian, an ironical one with a stoic demeanor, or also absurdism or carnivalesque, meaning Luhmann almost took, he was fine with chaos. He understood that the world is chaotic and complex, and he also was not a fan of people that have the almost ego or lack of humility to think that their ideas, like their left-winged ideas, could absolutely shape and change all of the systems in society. And his philosophical views were a mixture of Stoicism, Spinozism, and Taoism. And those little red references at the bottom are the references to the page numbers on which these ideas and assertions can be found. So this is an example of a reformulation note. Now, while I was writing this reformulation note, the other idea that came to my mind was okay, if I'm writing this section for my readers of my book on an anti-net, why should they even care about learning this stuff? And that is what then spurred me to write another note while writing this one. And that note was this. And so you see, I like to put my reflection notes in white, and then my reformulation notes usually on a colored card, just to add an extra contextual signal to me while going through this stuff. And so this is the section, why even important to understand Luhmann the man. And I reflected on this. I was like, it's kind of funny, because Luhmann and the spirit of Luhmann, of how almost complex and complicated his theories were, also mirrors the complexities and the misinterpretations that seems to plague the current modern day Zettelkasten space. People are super confused on what even Luhmann built, and if you try to read his paper, Communicating with Notebox, it's 3 pages if printed out in small type, yet it took me literally a month of reading and going through very carefully with pen and paper, right, to even decipher it and disentangle all of his thoughts to understand it. And he did this for, a good reason. He was unapologetically complex because he, basically said, why should things be easy? Why should I make people not prepare and dive in and use their brains to understand my material? And I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to understand the complexity of Luhmann the man and his ideas, because it's carried forward, and a lot of the spirit and the design of his systems is also reflected in really his theoretical work. And I'll be explaining it more in my book, but this is the reflection note. This is a note I created while creating this reformulation note of even talking about it. And so these I then filed in their specific spots in my antinet. But this process, what it allows you to do is, so I read this book fairly quickly, and what doing it this way, this Luhmann-esque two-step way, by first putting your brief ideas here as almost like a staging post or a staging area, it allows you to look at all the ideas and not get too caught up or hung up on excerpting, which is a risk if you just read a book straight and go straight into creating a 3x5 note card, which I do like to do for some books. For some books, when there's no time limit and I'm just in pure exploration mode, then that's good and fine. Like, for instance, if I, decided to read, here's a book I have not read yet, but it's like the Psychology of Intelligence Analysis, and it's a book that goes through like the various tools for breaking down challenging problems, right? And I have no idea on this whole space, like intelligence analysis and structured analytic techniques, right? I'm probably going to go through this one straight from the book to extract, and not try to do an intentional, goal with reading it. So anyway, this showcases the process of what it's like to actually take literature notes, the two-step literature notes in the Niklas Luhmann-esque type fashion. And yeah, hope that gave you some insight, and hope it helped. What I would really love for you to do, if this video did help you out, is two things. First of all, subscribe to my channel. Second of all, like this video. And third of all, I actually lied, I want you to do three things, is share it with a friend. That's it. So the number one thing, I don't care if you do any of those things, the number one thing is to subscribe to my channel. And also please provide any feedback in the comment section below for any other questions, or just to say thanks. Peace and love, and look forward to continuing to share with you my work. All right, talk to you later, bye.